Whoa now, Eddie, you're going soft. No, Eddie's going soft. For people that are unaware, I recently just released a video. At the time of recording this, actually, it was a few days ago that it was publicized, but I'm sure that it'll be quite a while since it was uploaded by the time you see this, where I said, is zero carb always ideal? When should you reintroduce carbohydrates back into your diet? If anytime at all. And I got quite a few comments, exactly what I anticipated, of people basically saying, no, there's no time to basically reintroduce a poison into your diet, and also someone else saying, no, there's never a time because they're not required. But believe it or not, I actually got more comments saying the exact opposite and misinterpreting my message. Basically, people were using my video to reinforce their addictions. I'm just going to be brutally honest here. They said, yeah, I'm off the low carb train. It really slowed me down. Cole Robinson knows what he's talking about. I eat hundreds of grams of carbs a day. I'm going, whoa, what? I didn't say that I support that. In fact, there's never a time that you require 100 grams of carbohydrates in a day. Okay, let's just emphasize what I meant in the video. Let's just reiterate what I said in more detail. Okay, what I said was that depending on your ancestral lineage, your ancestors will have engaged in agricultural behavior, eaten more agriculture, proportionally speaking, than other ancestral lineages. This also goes for dairy as well, since that also started to be something that was, starting to be ubiquitous and occur more often in the agricultural revolution, particularly the domestication of animals, which is where we started getting dairy from. And therefore, you could have had a slight atrophy over the course of 13,000 years in your gluconeogenic efficiency, to the point where, yeah, maybe you need 20 grams of carbohydrates to make up for that genotypic inefficiency that you may or may not have. And that's also why I said, given the fact that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to determine whether you're one of these people, you should do it through experimentation, where you stop eating carbohydrates, because as a general rule, they are not required, and then see how you do for a while. And if you're starting to have issues that seem to be related to an insulin regulation issue, do what I always say on this channel, which is eat a sufficient bolus of protein for your needs, or perhaps supplement electrolytes if you think that you're not getting enough, which would mean that it's not an insulin issue, it's simply an electrolyte issue. Okay, and then see what happens, try that, and then if that doesn't work, well, then try and find the least toxic carbohydrates. Okay, I know what people are thinking. Eddie, that's exactly what Paul Saladino said. Except it also isn't, because Paul Saladino used it as an opportunity to eat a bunch of fruit and honey, which, first of all, you're going to talk about the least toxic carbohydrates. Those are not it. Sorry. Those are not it, okay? But he also used it as an opportunity to eat hundreds of grams a day. That's not me. By the way, I swear to you, that never, ever will be me, okay? That's just not how things go on this channel, okay? We operate under the truth, okay? Based on the truth, all right? 13,000 years is not enough for us to have had a full genotypic reversal, almost, in our indicated diet to a carbohydrate-rich diet and very low fat and low protein. It's just, that didn't happen, okay? There's no arguing in the world, there's no point in the world that's ever going to justify that belief, okay? It's just not grounded in truth. However, there is some truth when it comes to an atrophying of a system. If you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, there's not a maintenance of a positive selection pressure on gluconeogenesis to make it efficient enough to supply us with glucose for years on end without any exogenous input. That is a plausible explanation. That is a plausible sort of posit there, okay? It doesn't mean that, okay, you get to eat all the carbohydrates in the world. No, in fact, that's not great. Our efficiency for gluconeogenesis is still that of hypercarnivores, okay? There's another point that I need to clear up. I wrote about this in my book, Contraindicated. Once again, I usually hold up the hardcover. This time I'll hold up the paperback. Okay. Once again, guys, buy now, link in the description below. Paperback, hardcover, and audiobook, link in the description below. Again, still working on the ebook. La-di-di-di-da. Anyway, I wrote about this in the second edition, particularly, of my book. I didn't even write about it in the first edition. People need to understand this. The mere existence of gluconeogenesis does not mean that you do not require carbohydrates. I'm sorry. That is a fact. It's the efficiency that matters. Why do I say this? Well, nectarivores, which are not mammals, I understand that, but it's an animal that has gluconeogenesis. These include things like sunbirds, hummingbirds, and certain types of bats. They subsist on, hence their species name, nectar, glucose, primarily. It doesn't mean they don't eat other things, but it means that they primarily consume glucose. In fact, postprandially speaking, the highest recorded glucose reading, blood glucose reading in birds postprandially in these nectarivores is like 52 millimoles per liter, which is absolutely insane. But on average, I believe it was about 17, which is still quite high, yet they don't come down with diabetes. In fact, their HbA1c values remain lower than non-diabetic humans on average. Clearly, they're evolved to be consuming primarily glucose, okay? For us, our efficiency is much higher though. So those birds have gluconeogenesis because every single animal faces the threat of starvation, which would require some degree of glucose production capability, and they also sleep. So obviously they don't necessarily sleep as long as humans do, okay? But it doesn't matter. The mere existence of gluconeogenesis does not mean that we don't require carbohydrates. I've heard people say this before. It's like, well, gluconeogenesis though, and it's like, yes and no. It's our efficiency for it that indicates that we are hypercarnivores. Okay, so anyway, I don't want to make this longer than it has to be. But I guess the last note that I'll add to emphasize that we are still hypercarnivores, okay? I'm not going to get off this train, all right? Is that even in a non-ketogenic person, in a standard American, eating a standard American diet, in their fed state, if you actually assess the ratio of catabolic enzymes to anabolic enzymes, it's still much higher than you would expect it to be in an actual carbohydrate-dependent individual. It still is. Here's another point. In type 2 diabetes, where you have chronically elevated blood glucose, you know it still pumps out glucose? The liver, which means that the high levels of insulin and the high levels of glucose in the blood are still not enough to suppress glucose production in the liver. You know why? Because our liver is most designed to produce the vast majority of the glucose for us, okay? We haven't had a pressure for glucose and insulin levels to be such an inhibitor of gluconeogenesis to the degree that it would shut it off completely, because we haven't been eating primarily glucose, okay? The last point that I'll add about this, okay? What animal in the wild actually derives the majority of their nutrient intake, their macronutrient intake, in the form of carbohydrates? So I just listed one, and I think it's really the only one that I know of, which is nectarivores. However, they're not really too similar to us, okay? We're talking about mammals. You can include primates in this, okay? Well, the answer is none. Most herbivores do not derive most of their energy from carbohydrates, okay? What they do is they use the fiber they're eating from plants and ferment it into short-chain fatty acids. They use fat for energy production purposes. Most mammals, if not all of them, they do. Why are we the only ones that don't? I mean, again, people that were worried that I'm going to go down this Paul Saladino rabbit hole, that's not true. We're just the only mammal that has for 13,000 years actually derived a significant amount of substrate in the form of direct simple sugars, carbohydrates, or ones that break down to that, like starches, for example. Okay, other animals did not. They also have not hybridized their food to have that concentrated of an amount of carbohydrates. So given that we are the only ones that have done that, it would explain why we are the only ones that may need or require some degree of carbohydrates, again, depending on your ancestral lineage. Everyone is genotypically different, okay? So I just want to clarify this because there are a lot of people that are just, they're worried. And it may come from a good place, and to those people, I understand. And this is why I'm making this video for you. Hopefully this can, provide some clarification. However, for the other people, I think that it may even be the majority, I suspect, of people, they believed, they were upset because, I'm not an ideologue. There's ideologues in every single space. Every single space. People don't like nuance, I've learned. And yeah, that's not me. I love nuance. I like tapping into the nuance. I really do. I really do. And that's never going to change. So anyway, this has been, by the way, consistent with my ideology. I said this in the last video. Based on the Darwinian principles of evolution, the principles of indication, this fits completely along those lines. I've never said otherwise. The reason that I say the exact required amount of carbohydrates for humans across the board is 0 grams, not 1 gram ever, is for the same reason that we say that humans have 5 fingers and 5 toes, despite the fact that some people have 4 and some people have 6. It's a general rule for efficiency purposes. Okay? Some people here and there, they might, okay, need 20 grams. And you know what? I'll even give you this. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day. Why can't you just go a week without carbs, and then at the very end of the day, or the very last day of the week, or maybe last day of the month, or however frequently you want to do it, you have 50 grams. I mean, is that really that big of a deal? So anyway, I just want people to understand that the dogma is a real problem. Real problem. I am not dogmatic, and I never will be. In fact, this might actually provide an additional benefit to the channel, exemplifying that fact. It may be a refresher for people that see how I act in my critique videos to understand. Just acting that way doesn't necessarily indicate that I'm, dogmatic and I'm an ideologue or something. Because, trust me, my ideology that I follow is based in truth. So wherever the truth is, that's what guides my ideology. And what that means is that my ideology will not be threatened by additional nuance. And I hope to make people share the same sentiment if they don't already. It took me a while. I was an ideologue at first whenever I got into this space because I was so passionate about it. But I didn't let that, hinder me in the discovery of additional truth. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. I didn't expect this video to go on this long, actually, at all. I thought it was going to be a 3 to 5 minute video. But anyway, if you found this insightful, leave a like. And definitely leave your comments and the thoughts. Whoa, leave your oh, God. First video of the day, by the way. And it's early in the morning, so to be expected. This is my warm-up. Definitely leave your thoughts in the comment section below on this one. I'm sure that more people are going to have more thoughts than usual on this type of video. And subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like, once again. And again, if you want to learn more about this nuance, buy my book, Contraindicated. Link in the description below. You will not regret it. It's a longer read there, but I mean, I think that's a healthy amount of knowledge. So anyway, I'll see you in the next one when I'm either, monologuing towards the camera or I'm critiquing some absolute buffoon online. So, till then.